this together. We'll try to make the time as meaningful as possible. I want to begin by just noting that today is Yud Het Tammuz, which means that the fast is not today. Today is Yud Het Tammuz. Yesterday was Yud Zayin Tammuz. In 3 weeks from now, the same thing will happen in that Shabbat will fall out on Shabbat. We will not fast. We will fast on the 10th of Av, that Sunday. Not an uncommon phenomenon that when the fast falls out on Shabbat, it is pushed to Sunday. Now, I want you to keep that in mind. Before we come back to it, we need to understand what it is that we are commemorating on the fast day. So I take you to a Mishnah, Masechet Ta'anit, Daf Kaf Cher Amud Bet. You all know it very, very well. Hamisha Devarim Er'u Et Avotenu B'Shiv'a Asar B'Tammuz. V'Hamisha B'Tisha B'Av. There are 5 tragedies that happened on Shiv'a Asar B'Tammuz yesterday, and 5 tragedies that happened on Tisha B'Av, Shabbat, in 3 weeks from now, that will not be commemorated, will be commemorated on Sunday. What are the 5 that we commemorate today? B'Shiv'a Asar B'Tammuz Nishtabiru HaLuchot. On the 17th of Tammuz, the Luchot were smashed by Moshe Rabbeinu. National tragedy. Not 40 days ago, God told us unequivocally and unambiguously, do not worship idols. Again, not a month later or 40 days later, we worship idols. Moshe Rabbeinu brings down the Luchot and he smashes them to the ground in the face of that national tragedy. That happened yesterday. Ubatal HaTamid, the Korban Tamid, the daily Korban that was offered every single day in the Bet HaMikdash, on Shiv'a Asar B'Tammuz was nullified. It ceased to exist. The concept was abolished. So the concept of Korbanot was nullified. V'huvke'a ha'ir, the walls of Yerushalayim were broken, were breached by the enemies. They entered into Yerushalayim. They began to ransack and rape and destroy and set on fire as the destruction began, of course, leading up to for 3 weeks to Tisha B'Av, where they would destroy the Bet HaMikdash. So the breaching of the walls happened yesterday. V'saraf apostemos et haTorah. Apostemos, one of the generals, burned a Sefer Torah. And lastly, the Hamid Tselem B'Hechal. An idol was set up in the Bet HaMikdash. So the holiest place on earth, an idol, completely antithetical to everything we believe in, was set up in the Bet HaMikdash. Of course, on the 9th of Av, the 2 Bet HaMikdashot were destroyed, and a whole host of other things, including the destruction and the razing of the city of Betad. Thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of Jews were killed, their bodies laid to waste in the city without burial. Amongst other things on Tisha B'Av. That's what we are commemorating today, or yesterday, on Shiv'a Asar B'Tammuz. In that regard, the Rambam writes in Hilchot Ta'anit, יש שם ימים שכל ישראל מתענים בהם מפני הצרות שאירעו בהם כדי לעורר הלבבות ולפתוח דרכי התשובה. There are days, fast days, on which the Jewish people fast. Because on those days, tragedies happen, and we want to, through fasting, awaken our hearts and open up our minds to teshuvah. And we should be reminded of all of the things that we're doing wrong. And all of the things that our forefathers did wrong, that caused all of these tragedies. Because if we remember these things and we change, then we can rectify what has happened. So it should be very clear that Shiv'a Asar B'Tammuz and Tisha B'Av are commemorating national tragedies of biblical proportions. I don't think it gets worse than the destruction of the Bet HaMikdash. It doesn't get worse than the fact that hundreds of thousands of bodies are laid to waste in the streets without burial. It doesn't get worse than an idol being erected in the Bet HaMikdash. But there's an interesting halacha. And halacha is stated very clearly by Maran and Shulchan Aruch. Kol dalit tzomot halalu. All of these 4 fasts, they include Tisha B'Av, Shiva Asar B'Tamuz, anybody want to help me? Asara B'Tevet, and Tzom Gedaliah. Any one of those 4 fasts, im halu lehiyot b'Shabbat, if they fall out on Shabbat, nidchin le'achar Shabbat, they are pushed off to Sunday. It's very strange, because we're commemorating national tragedy. So let's reverse for a second for the married people in the room. You had your anniversary on April 3rd. Guys. And you tell your wife, I don't like Tuesday. Falls out. We're going to commemorate on the next day. I'm not sure how well that's going to go over, because that's not the day that celebrates, that commemorates what is intrinsic to the day. By the same token, it's very strange that you take a national tragedy and we're moving it to another day. Not only are we moving it to another day, but another halacha Shulchan Aruch writes, Im chad Shabbat b'Shabbat, mutar b'kulan afilu b'tashmish hamita. So we have a rule. Avelut, mourning, is not expressed on Shabbat. Any person who's mourning a loved one inevitably is going to pass through Shabbat because you're mourning for 7 days. Shabbat, there is no mourning, at least not in public. So you don't wear your ripped clothes. And anything else that is a public display of mourning is tucked away on Shabbat for the sake of Shabbat, but anything that is a private display of mourning is still held. So if Bar Minan, someone is mourning a loved one of the laws of Avelut is that a man or a woman who are in mourning are not allowed to have intimacy. So even though on Shabbat you do not have outward displays of mourning, there are still private displays of mourning, and on the Shabbat of mourning, you're not allowed to have intimacy. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbat, all bets of mourning are off, in that even private displays of mourning are not to be had. Because again, on Tisha B'Av we're mourning. Right? You have the 5 Inuyim. Can't bathe, can't wear leather shoes. One of them is intimacy. Intimacy on Tisha B'Av is asur. But if Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbat, even though the entire rest of the year, someone who is mourning is not allowed intimacy on the Shabbat in which they are mourning, on Tisha B'Av, when you're mourning national tragedy of biblical proportions, it's allowed. Not only is it allowed, but Tisha B'Av falls out on Shabbat, you're allowed to have meat and wine. If Tisha B'Av falls out on Sunday, as it does this year, Seudah Shlishit, prior to Tisha B'Av, you're allowed to, in fact it's even recommended, to have a meal of meat and wine. But today is the day where they erected an idol in Beit HaMikdash. Today is the day that they killed hundreds of thousands of people and they laid their bodies waste in the streets. Why is it the case that if we're commemorating national tragedy, the levels of which they exist on these days, if it falls out on Shabbat, we move it. Not only do we move it, we delete it. And I think the answer is very clear. Shabbat is, bar none, the holiest day on the calendar. Undisputed. Not Yom Kippur, not Rosh Hashanah, not your wedding day, not the day on which you had your first child. Shabbat is the holiest day on the calendar. No dispute. In fact, Shabbat is the first thing in the Torah to be called holy. Go back to Parashat Bereshit. Famous pasuk, Vayivarech Elohim et Yom HaShavi vayikadesh oto, ki bo Shabbat mikom la'achto asher bara Elohim la'asot. Vayivarech Elohim et Yom HaShavi vayikadesh oto. The first thing called holy in the text is Shabbat. I might suggest Shabbat is the wellspring, is the source, is the core of Kedusha. Everything stems from there. You'll note when you make a beracha on Shabbat, in the Amidah, Baruch Ata Hashem, Mekadesh HaShabbat V'Yisrael. On the holidays, it's switched. Baruch Ata Hashem, Mekadesh Yisrael V'Hazimanim. What happened? On Shabbat, Shabbat came first, and then the people. On the holidays, the people came first, and then the holidays. We, the people, have the authority and the ability to sanctify the holidays. God gave us the framework of a calendar. We have the mitzvah of Rosh Chodesh, of Kiddush Levana. We decide when the holidays fall out. In fact, there's a machloket in Masechet Rosh Hashanah between two rabbis arguing when Yom Kippur was falling. And the one of higher authority made the other one travel to his city on the day of Kippur that he decided was Kippur. We decide the holiness of the holidays. It's a fantastic, fantastic idea. We dictate the sanctity of time, but not for Shabbat. Shabbat sanctifies you. You do not sanctify Shabbat, hence Mekadesh HaShabbat v'Yisrael. Shabbat comes first. So holy is Shabbat that the pasuk writes in Sefer Shemot, "Ve'ata daber el bnei Yisrael lemor ach et shabbatotai tishmoru ki oti beni ubenechem v'dorotechem la'adat ki ani Hashem mekadishchem." God said to the Jewish people, or God tells Moshe to tell the Jewish people, keep my Shabbat because it is a sign between I and them for generations to come, so that they should know that I am God who made you holy. What is the context of that parasha? What are we talking about in Shemot Lamed Aleph? Talking about the Mishkan. So Rashi writes on the pasuk, when it says, Et Shabbatatai Tishmoru, the message is, building the Mishkan stops for the sake of Shabbat. The Sfat Emet on that pasuk writes, when the time comes to build the Bet HaMikdash, Mashiach comes Thursday, this Thursday, 4 days from now, Mashiach comes, we start building the Bet HaMikdash Friday morning. We've been waiting for it for 2,000 years. There will be no more excitement exuded by the Jewish people than to build the Bet HaMikdash. Friday night sunset comes, everybody go home and celebrate Shabbat. There is nothing more important on this earth, even the building of the Bet HaMikdash, than Shabbat. It's a mind-blowing concept. So it's true. Even though we are commemorating national tragedy, for the sake of Shabbat, we will put that on hold. Not only will we put it on hold, we will delete it. And if we need to, we will celebrate Shabbat in the face of the day that otherwise should be commemorating national tragedy. Have meat and wine on the Shabbat of Tisha B'Av and move it to tomorrow. There is nothing. There is no greater gift that the Jewish people got from HaKadosh Baruch Hu than the day of Shabbat. It's not for naught that most of the times that Shabbat is mentioned in the Torah, it is mentioned in conjunction with the Mishkan, as I just showed you an example of in the Pasuk. The Mishkan and Shabbat represent two opposing things that are pulling on man. The Mishkan symbolizes space. Shabbat symbolizes time. Those are the two things that we are constantly grappling with, and they represent something, and all my former students are going to laugh because I always go down this path. The Mishkan is space. Space is power. It's money. It's assets. It's real estate. It's stature. All of the things that we want to conquer as human beings living in a three-dimensional world. Shabbat is time. It's the intangibles. It's spirituality. It's a connection with Borei Olam. It's interpersonal relationships. It's tefillah. It's all of the things that you cannot touch, as symbolized by time. They are constantly at odds with each other, space and time. And when God says Shabbat trumps the building of the Bet HaMikdash, the message embedded in that is, at the end of the day, what's going to be the eternal victory that you have is the conquering of the things that are time in your life. Those will be your legacy. The spirituality, the relationship with Borei Olam, the things, the values that you pass on, those will be your legacy. All of the space that you conquered, it's not going to last. But you know what, says God? I got it. I got that you're a human being. I got that you live in a three-dimensional world. I got the challenges. So let's make a deal. 6 days of the week, conquer space. Go to work, make money, build your stature, conquer real estate, accumulate assets. 6 days, conquer space. Can I get 1 day? 1 day, conquer time. 1 day, disengage from the desire of man to conquer all of the things that he cannot help but conquer. Spend time in tefillah. Spend time building your relationship with Borei Olam. Spend time sitting around the table, talking to your family, talking to your kids, talking to your parents about all of the things that you believe in. But it's so utterly difficult, especially when we live in a world that is constantly grabbing at our attention to conquer more and more space. When I used to teach 10th grade halacha, Hilchot Shabbat, I always had a hard time getting students on board with understanding the importance of and the beauty of Shabbat. So I decided on a different approach. Came into class, I said, guys, today we're not learning Shabbat. Today we're going to have an activity. And the activity is, you create your own day on the calendar that you want to celebrate and commemorate whatever it is that you want. Give it a name, give it rules, and tell me why you want to celebrate it. 5 or 10 minutes, I did the activity. I called on people, I got basic stuff, things that were reminiscent of a birthday, anniversary, basic stuff. Finally, I got one girl that says, Rabbi, I want to have donut day. All right, I'm intrigued. I erased the board, put on the top of the board, donut day. What's donut day? On donut day, we are going to celebrate the creation of the donut. I write it feverishly on the board, creation of the donut, and now the wheels are turning. What are we doing on donut day? On donut day, everybody has to have a donut at every meal. Donut at every meal. Anything else you want to tell me about donut day? On donut day, you have to wear donut attire. Donut pajamas, donut hats, face paint donuts. I'm feverishly writing donut day, donut attire. What happens if you don't wear donut attire? Rabbi, do not desecrate donut day like that. And finally I said, why do you want to have donut day? So she says, Rabbi, if you only understood the divinity of the donut, you wouldn't question your donut day. And I put it on the board and I erased donut day. I said, guys, does this sound like anything to you? And finally they understood the gift of Shabbat. They just didn't see it from the perspective of the gift that God gave us. if I go back to the Rambam, who said that on these fast days we introspect and do self-reflection to try and get back to a path where we are proud of the things that we are doing, I might suggest that we start with Shabbat. Forget all the other things. Start with Shabbat. What does it mean to you? What does it look like in your house? If it is so powerful that we're willing to delete the commemoration of national tragedy on that day and move it, what does it mean to you? And what are you going to do to make it the day that it's supposed to be? Take another time.